So let's get this show on the road. Mr. McLean, I could go on for him for a really long time. He would probably be upset with me if I did, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet and hopefully tell you a few things maybe about him that you may or may not already know. He's been an athlete his whole life. He was an All-American and NCAA champion at the University of Houston, and he's won numerous prestigious golf events at every level, as an amateur, collegiate player, mini-tour player, and as a professional. He played in 1 U.S. Junior Amateur Championship, 3 U.S. Amateurs, finishing 4th once, competed on the NGA Tour, the Canadian Tour, and the PGA Tour, played in 2 U.S. Opens, made the cut at the Masters, and qualified for the U.S. Senior Open. Pretty good stuff. He's been ranked a top teacher in the U.S. for nearly 30 years and has owned and operated the Jim McLean Golf School since 1991, which currently calls home at the Biltmore Hotel in Miami. Not only has Mr. McLean helped countless golfers, he's also been an excellent advocate for education of fellow PGA members. He's served on the National Education Committee and National Teaching Committee for 15 years. He led instructor training for PGA workshops for 20 years and has earned the great honor of being a PGA National Teacher of the Year. He's been an outstanding promoter of junior golf as well and growing the game through assisting and initiating the Met PGA Junior Golf Program, and has been a longtime sponsor of several junior tours. For years, he's helped top junior golfers and over 100 professional players. It's probably more than that now, including PGA Tour players, LPGA Tour players, and numerous major champions. To name just a few, they are Christy Kerr, Gary Woodland, Curtis Strange, Greg Norman, Keegan Bradley, Lexi Thompson, Gary Player, Bernard Longer, Al Geiberger, Ben Crenshaw, Tom Kite, Webb Simpson. You get the idea, okay? Jim's a member of 6 Hall of Fames, including the prestigious World Golf Teachers Hall of Fame. He's presented at events all over the world. He paid us a huge compliment. He hadn't even seen the event start, and he could tell that this one was really special, and he made a point to say that. So we're very fortunate to be here, and that's coming from someone that's spoken all over the country, certainly, and even throughout the world. It's an honor to have you here today, Mr. McLean. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Jim McLean.
Isn't that something? Thank you. Imagine you're studying physics or researching geology or teaching students. The kid, to maybe in a rocket launch. Maybe you're teaching golf. You could be studying anything. But evidence is hammered out. Data is always king. But you need to combine it with a scientific literacy or a scientific method. You need to check the information, get dissenting opinions, and that would go from me today too. The human brain processes information really differently. It filters through your brain and it constructs through your brain. And there's confirmation bias. This is the basing results from the tendency to process and analyze information that supports your existing ideas and your convictions. The brain updates and defaults into a way that rationalizes your opinion. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever learned something and then you say, I knew that all along? Or you learn a new word and the next day you hear that word 2 or 3 times? Or you become aware of something in a golf swing and then you see it in the golf swing all the time. We believe a story that we tell ourselves, and sometimes it's based on flawed information, and lots of people can be wrong. That's been proven throughout human history. For example, the earth is flat for centuries, or maybe something like you can't go beyond the speed of sound that lasted for decades. Our golf ideas should be challenged and examined. Is it true? Is the method or the statement made by a teacher or a commentator true? It may or may not be. Critical examination is the fix, and some teachers have done a 360-degree turn on formerly strongly held beliefs. So it's hard to appreciate the potential for your own self-deception. Beliefs are extremely strong. You can think of politics, or you can think of a young child that believes there's a monster in the closet. We all want to view ourselves as rational, But that may be one of the greatest deceptions of all. If you think you're not biased and you don't rationalize yourself, this is the greatest bias of all. We all come to erroneous beliefs. It will happen, especially if you don't do critical thinking. There's a definite tendency to underestimate the potential for human deception even among critical thinkers. Memorization is a skill, and it can make a person sound very smart. You can think of actors. Some people can memorize the Bible. That's true. And I lived in New York. You could go down to New York City, and you could see someone standing on a stool pontificating like a Harvard PhD for hours. Today I'm going to show you some great past ball strikers, some great champions. I'm going to talk about maybe minimizing confirmation bias. I want to thank you for that great introduction. That was a surprise, very interesting introduction there, really great. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and my dream was always to come to Southern California. I've always loved coming to California, and I really appreciate being able to come here today. Jamie called me about a few months ago, and you wouldn't believe the invite. He said, "We need an old guy." And, it's not exactly what you want to hear, really, but he's right. I've been around a long time. I've taken a lot of lessons myself. I've visited a lot of great teachers. I've been to see a lot of coaches inside and outside of our game. He wanted me to speak about the great swings of the past. So I'm going to show you in a little while here some of the greatest players of all time. And we'll take a look at them and see what you think. At Doral and at PGA West, I was there 26 years at Doral and 17 years at PGA West. We had PGA Tour events, so that made things a lot easier. My staff taped every player every year, and then we did detailed studies. So I would have 30 to 45 reports each year. And we'd look at everything, what the club was doing at the top, how many people were past parallel, short of parallel, what was the club face at the top, what was the body doing, how much shoulder turn was there in the swing, and the footwork, and who lifted their left heel and who didn't. So, that was a big benefit for me. But before this, I just worked with one guy, and that was Carl Welty. And yeah. So a lot of you know Carl. Sorry Derek's not here today. I'll talk about that. I know there's outstanding coaches out here. I know it's so impressive, the people in this room. I wanted to recognize a couple that have worked for me that are out here. Jake Tolliver's out there, Brian Lebitovich from PGA West. I think Devin Bonebreak's here. He's a famous Golf Channel guy now. And Jordan King, and there's more. So I'm glad to see that they're all doing really good stuff. Carl grew up not far from here in San Diego. He worked for the great Paul Runyon at La Jolla, and he played college golf for San Diego State. He set up his golf school at La Costa, which was the first golf school west of the Mississippi. And there he became great friends with a guy named Bill Glasson. And Bill had worked for Howard Hughes at Hughes Aircraft and Hughes Missile. And he was involved in the first space launch. Bill graduated #1 out of MIT. Carl taught Bill golf, and Bill taught Carl how to do a lot better research. In 1966, Carl asked Bill if he could build him a speed machine, and Bill did it. And then in 1972, he asked Bill if I love the speed machine, because Carl loved speed. In his school, he always had the miles per hour what your handicap could be. So that was pretty much his fundamental number one thing. But 1972, he asked him to build a machine that would do club face and path, and also the tempo of the swing. Now, he built that, and it was a fantastic machine. That's the one I used when I went out to La Costa, and that he used with a lot of tour players. He taught a lot of great tour players. That machine then became something that Bud Blankenship up in Idaho kind of copied that machine. That's the one I used when I went to New York. It was called Golf Tech. So, we've got so many great things now, but I just given you a little background of how things kind of progressed. Bill Glasson, when he retired from Hughes, was doing unbelievable things at his house in Del Mar. As far as golf, he loved studying golf. So he had strobe lights, and he brought a lot of tour players over there. Jack Nicklaus came, and Tom Weiskopf came, and Gene Littler, and a lot of other players. And they found out about this company in San Diego, knew about it, and they talked to Bill, and they coerced him into coming to work for their company. It was called Golfcraft. And at Golfcraft, he became quickly known as the brain, and he built for them. They requested that he build a machine, a robot, to test golf balls and golf equipment. And then that became the forerunner to the iron biring. And you might know that Golfcraft was sold in 1968 to Titleist. In 1969, Carl moved up to Seattle, Washington to open up the Sahali golf course. Paul Runyon was coming up there. So Carl, being the type of person he is, I was winning some tournaments at the time. He called the place where I practiced and got in touch with me, and he came out to film me. But back then, it was an 8mm camera. It took 2 weeks to get the film back. But he also had something called a graph check sequence camera, which was, I don't know, I'm sure you don't know what it is, but you'd pull out this sheet and it would have 8 pictures. And I quickly got one when I went to teach in New York at Westchester Country Club. I got one of those. And I could time, there's a little dial on the side, and you could time it up, and you can get 4 backswing and 4 downswing pictures in it. So, the 8 steps kind of came out of that, for one of the first books I wrote. We became friends then when I met him in 1969, and then he died in 2018. So we went almost 50 years together. And you wouldn't believe the detail and the study and the effort that Carl Welty made. It was just unbelievable. Derek, I wish he was here, he would know. I think Doug Timmons is out there, and Doug was another guy. Hi, Doug. Sorry, I can't see you there. Doug was a good friend of Carl Welty. He knew him at La Costa, and then he kind of got Derek to come over in the early 2000s. And Derek was just like a sponge. When these guys came over, I was there a lot of times when they did come over. And I would go every night to Carl's place my whole life until PGA West, we left there, went bankrupt in 2012 with some of the other things. And that, how golf goes, things happen. But I loved going over there, and we'd study the video. It's unbelievable to watch the stuff. It happened in 1980. Video machines came out, actually in the end of '79. And I was teaching in New York. I went right down to New York City, a place called Crazy Eddie's. I got a Sony Betamax. Carl had one, and that's where the video work, that was a big change. So at the Tournament of Champions, which was held at La Costa every year, we would go out and film the tournament. During the tournament, we put the cameras right out there on the tripod. Nobody cared. So it was a different world. Nobody really cared if they filmed. The guys were interested. They wanted to see their videos. So we filmed the practice rounds, but we also filmed right during the tournament. And our first study that Carl and I did together, the first project, was what do all the tour players do the same? And that was really tough to find anything that was the same. It took us a long time to get 5 things. But his mantra became, which is my mantra now, was I would bring Carl ideas, because Carl didn't go anywhere. He just pretty much stayed in his condominium or went to the golf course and back, and we'd go to dinner at the same place every night. That was kind of how Carl, he just didn't go anywhere. He wouldn't fly, refused, he was afraid of flying, I guess, and he just wouldn't fly, and he just wouldn't go anywhere. But I went everywhere. So I would bring him, I'd say, well, this is a fundamental, maybe, and he'd say, well, let's go to the videotape. And that's what Carl always said, right, Doug? Let's go to the videotape. You think that's right? Let's go check the top 10 players in the world and see if they do that. I've kept my videos forever. my office looks pretty terrible right now in Biltmore, but we're transferring everything over. Craig Welty has the machine and all of Carl's videos up in Seattle. He's putting them on, streaming them right now too. Anyway, I want to thank you all for that introduction. I didn't really say that, but pretty amazing to get this nice introduction here. And I've got, I want to get right to the videos that I'm going to do. I'm going to just kind of walk off this podium here, and we'll start with these videos. I've got a couple things to show you. This is the original Golf Machine book. I don't know if you see the green one, but I brought that along. And I brought something I did with Christy Kerr on biomechanics from 1994. We actually had biomechanics at Doral. I'm going to walk down here so I can see. Oops. I think I forgot something. The clicker. This is the introduction I did for the video I did on Hogan. I hope the audio is there.
The mystique. The Hogan mystique. It wasn't one thing. It was the man. The way he carried himself. The way he dressed. The way he practiced. The way he overcame the odds to become one of the most revered golfers of all time.
You'd observe Hogan by the way he dressed. That's the first thing. He would come out immaculately dressed to do anything, with custom-made slacks, custom-made shoes, custom-made shirts, every hat, everything that Ben had anything to do with. His clubs were immaculate and extremely well designed, well thought out with the shafts. Equipment was important to him, and he would start that way.
Well, that was Jackie Burke. I met Jackie when I went to the University of Houston early on, and he was best friends with Hogan. Hogan's best friend was Jimmy DeMerit, and Jackie Burke and DeMerit built Champions. And there's only two courses that have held all the majors, and one's Pinehurst and one's Champions. They've had all the majors, the Ryder Cup, all the US Opens, women's, men's, amateurs, everything. It's a great place. And Jackie's been a huge part of my life, but those guys knew Hogan, they played with him all the time, so when I was at Houston, I was able to watch Hogan play, which was pretty cool. And the last tournament he played as a professional was the Houston Open. He would come down to Champions each year. He would come down for a week and stay with them. So we would sneak out, a few of us would sneak out and go watch him play, and there was really nobody watching him, so it was pretty cool to watch him play. One of my roommates at Houston was John Mahaffey. He was a year in front of me. So he actually played with Hogan one time and then became really good friends with Hogan. Mahaffey won the PGA. He lost the US Open in a playoff. He was the NCAA champion when I lived with him. He could really play. Hogan was an old man when he played with him, and Hogan hit it past him. It's pretty cool. I mean, Hogan was long, and he was the longest of his era, one of the top long guys. Not a big guy, but he was really a strong, well-built. I'm going to go through some Hogan stuff here with you. See if it'll go forward. Sorry, I'll get the hang of this thing going. Hogan in the 1940s won the money list for the whole decade that he played, every year. Except he was in the Army. He went in the military, World War II. I came out at the very end, the end of 1945. And then he was the leading money winner again. He won 63 times, 9 majors. 1949, he started off the tour. He won twice and lost in a playoff in one tournament. He was driving home to Fort Worth. He had the famous accident. Probably a lot of you don't, maybe not know that, but he had a major, had a major accident, and he almost died. They said he wouldn't walk again, and he ended up playing, so we've got hope for Tiger Woods. We're hearing Tiger will be back, probably will be back. This is 1953. He won all 3 majors. It's kind of cool with the background there, so you can look at the amount of movement in his swing, his famous waggle. You can see he's losing the hair. That's what happens. So I wanted to talk to you about a few things here as we go through. This was 1948. Hogan said his best year of his life of playing was 1948. Now that wasn't a writer talking about it or a commentator talking about it. That was Hogan when he was interviewed by Ken Venturi. Venturi asked him on the CBS clip, what was his best year? He said, really, I played my best in 1948. I think he won 13 times that year. So this was the video that I used when I did the Complete Hogan, the book I wrote about Hogan, because it's hard to get something that's on a tripod that's, you know, done perfect. That's at Riviera. It's a 3-wood that he hit. So the way that I've studied swings, and all the guys that have worked for me know we're pretty detailed. I'm going to talk to you more about where that camera's got to be, how we put things down on the ground to make sure we're lined up correctly, the height that we put the camera. But this is the 48 picture, or clips, to see the amount of lateral movement when he changes direction. Hogan talked about a lot of great things that we still teach nowadays, and one of them was an ignition move. He thought it was very important that you started your backswing off a forward move, off the forward move. Not everybody does that on the PGA Tour, but a lot of guys do. I think it's a great way to teach the game. I do see, you know, people have talked about, you know, there's so many teachers in years gone by used Hogan as a model. He was the guy that they looked at. So I would say Jimmy Ballard and the Golf Machine and Hank Haney were huge Hogan guys, and they all saw different things. It was like so radically different. So when I've done these studies and looked at them over the years, you know, you try to put the lines on it, you try to be as factual, you try to get the confirmation bias out. And for me, having so many young teachers and assistants and getting their opinion on what they see when they look at that video, like, what do you see on his backswing? Is he moving to the right? To me, he is moving to the right, but I guess somebody, like I talked about in the beginning, that's what I wanted to get through in the very start of this talk, was confirmation bias. We have blind spots. So Hogan, of course, if you took him at the top right-hand picture and say, well, that's the top of his swing, he'd say, okay, he's stacking and tilting on his left side. So he's to me, when I watched Hogan thousands and thousands of times, from the top, it looks like he just kind of falls over, and I see that downhill look on a lot of modern players. I love it, where you're going this way at the beginning of your swing, not that way, which is a killer move for the top player. But we're teaching that, I'm teaching that to a lot of average players, because they're going over the top, and we've got to go the other way. So, you know, I am sticking pretty much with great players here in this presentation today. Now, coming into impact, Hogan had a lot of lag, but he gets rid of this lag when he gets to impact. He talked, the number one thing he talked about in his book, the biggest drawing that Ravioli did in five lessons, was the left wrist at impact and not breaking down. So I spent a ton of time with Mr. Harmon, Butch's dad, at Wingfoot, and then down in the desert, he was at Morningside when I was the pro at Tamarisk. Mr. Harmon said that's iron, Bethlehem steel, he called it, when you hit the ball. So he was a huge Hogan guy. And That was a really big thing with Hogan. But you can see he releases the club and goes to that famous Hogan finish. Now, I could stay talking about Hogan for the whole time, but I'm going to try and move forward. This is Hogan at Tamarisk. Ben Hogan was also the head pro. I like to say he was also the head pro at Tamarisk in 1952 and 53. So there's a lot of history there at Tamarisk when I went there. This is a nice down-the-line drawing. Jackie always talked to me about Hogan holding the club with his right wrist down all the time. Ulnar deviation, we call it now. So the terminology is a lot better. Most everything's a lot better now, but still fun to watch guys that could really hit it. There is nobody I've ever talked to in my life, from Jack Nicklaus to Gary Player, Ben Crenshaw, Nick Price, on and on and on, who didn't put Ben Hogan at the top of the heap as as probably the greatest ball striker. They all revered him. Mr. Harmon won the Masters, Jackie Burke won the PGA and the Masters, Venturi won the US Open. They said they weren't even close. That was always so amazing to me of how the regard that his peers had for him. So I grew up in Seattle. This is the golf machine, and it has 12 positions. And these were the 12 positions in the golf machine. So when I went to see Homer Kelly at his home, and I spent a lot of time with Ben Doyle, I played with Ben Doyle, he was a good friend of mine. He did schools in my place. I didn't like some of the positions that much for my studies. But I loved the idea of positions. I just loved it. I thought it was great, and I'm a definite position teacher. All the guys that work for me know that. And I think positions are great because when I teach somebody, I can have them, whatever it is, somewhere in their swing, I can work on that spot. And when they leave the lesson, they know what they're doing. They know what they're trying to do. And you get criticized, I get criticized, because you shouldn't be teaching A to B to C to D. So you're going to teach 8 positions. I never teach 8 positions. But it's positions I look at. Like, where does your swing go off? Where does the club face get open? Is it early? Is it up here? Is it at the top of the swing? Or when you start down? So that's why, to me, when I use videotape, what are you going to do if you use videotape? Just play it through? Or are you going to stop the video? And then if you stop the video, what are you going to look at? Come on, babe. So here's what I look at. Safety zones. And that's why all of these teachers that work for me can teach a lot their own way. I mean, I go through a lot of things of how to teach, what's important, teaching the whole game, total game teaching. I saw you stole that, Devin, in your last video. Everybody, you're all total game teachers, but that's kind of the centerpiece of our golf school, total game teaching. Devin did it a lot different, but I did it with the long game, the short game, the mental game, the management game. And there's a lot of pieces in those. But the bottom part there is the backswing safety zone, because it's so unbelievably different, and that doesn't even cover it. Matthew Wolf's going to miss that top part of the bottom going out on his backswing. But I tried to make it so I could kind of get Jim Furyk in there and Ryan Moore and some other people that really take it up and outside on the backswing. And then there's a lot of players that take it low and to the inside. But you don't hit it with your backswing. So the guys that turn early tend to get it more to the inside. And guys that are late turners, like rotators, might take it up a little more. Freddie took it up a lot. And then that green shaded area is, for me, section 3 through section 7 of the swing, and that's the safety zone where I'm looking to see where that shaft is as you come down. And of course, we videotape, I think, differently than a lot of you all do. I tape the way Carl showed me, straight down the target line. We have the camera up. Well, when we filmed with a video camera, I know you won't believe this, but the camera stood on your shoulder, and you would kind of brace yourself, keep it steady, and videotape, or you put it on a tripod. But when you had it on your shoulder, it was about 50 inches off the ground. So that's what we use, 50 inches. It could be 52, somewhere close to that. It doesn't matter that much, but we try to be pretty precise on the height of the camera, where we place the camera. If you're going to film that way, you've got the camera, the ball, and your target. It's a no-brainer kind of deal, as long as you know where the target is. And I know a lot of people film down lower. That's fine, but I stand up when I teach, so this is the way I look at people, and that's worked really good for us. It's just important that you film the same way. I'd say that, consistency, so you can know what your students, it's really most important for your great students, your top students. You can film with a lot of the teachers for me have the iPad, of course, now. They're doing the iPad, and you can do tremendous work there. But to me, I've got a couple of really good young players I'm working with, and I show them videos that we've had since forever from Carl Welty's stuff. So this is Hogan, so this is how we'd look at it down the target line. That's mainly the Hogan plane was the most famous picture where he had the pane of glass over his shoulders. And then you have the original shaft plane, forms the safety zone. So it's fun to watch, where Hogan took the clip slightly under on the backswing and then pretty much straight down. He returns the shaft really good. Now that next line I have is impact plane. That's not address plane. So impact plane is all that matters for looking at the path of the golf club, or we'd say swing direction on TrackMan, whether it's inside out, outside in, or a neutral path. We know the tour players for most shots are really close to neutral. Hogan, of course, had his right forearm right down the impact plane line there at impact. There's great stuff to watch. Like I said, I could be up here for the whole day doing this. And there's Hogan's the exit plane. I think Carl and I, way back, came up with some things, the delivery position and exit and all of that stuff, because not too many people were doing it. And I'm going to show you something with that dry erase pen that Carl used. We had 2 TVs, 2 VCRs, and we drew on the TV. And we started doing that in 1980. Carl showed me again, fantastic. Drawing on the TV was maybe better than what we do right now, but I'll show you there at some point. This is what Ken Venturi had in his pocket. Venturi was dressed like Hogan, had the same hat, swung like Hogan. I played with Kenny for 40 years. We played hundreds of rounds together. He was great. He did 35 years with CBS Sports as the lead analyst. Great guy. Sam Snead. Okay. Sam Snead's a mythical guy, mythical figure. He's like the Babe Ruth of golf. Now we got Shohei Ohtani, who showed up here now, as another Babe Ruth. And I guess Tiger Woods came and did kind of what Sam did. Now Snead had huge influence, on Tiger Woods. His dad called Tiger Sam as a kid. They copied Sam Snead's swing. Tiger named his daughter Sam. Johnny Miller used Sam Snead as his model. His dad had a place in San Francisco, a basement, and they used Sam Snead's swing as a model. It's a pretty good model. That's a note he wrote to me. I did a video on Sam. I spent 3 days at his house in West Virginia, and then I stayed with him twice at the Masters. And he hit the ceremonial first tee shot, which was a pressurized deal, by the way. It wasn't like he just went up there and smacked it away, He was nervous. He was pretty old at that time, too, those years, but he did it. This is an old clip, of course. Sam leaned out over the ball pretty far. I want to tell you one story, too, about Sam. I taught Jerry West in the 90s some. He would come out to Doral. We were sitting out on the veranda one day, just talking about anything, and it just occurred to me on a question. I said, who's the greatest athlete you've ever seen in your life? So Jerry West is one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA. He's the logo for the NBA. And he's the president of the Lakers now. And he's a really good player. +2 handicap he was. So I'm thinking, all right, this is in the 90s, it's got to be Michael Jordan, slam dunk. But maybe he's going to say Wilt Chamberlain he played with. Because Wilt scored 100 points one night in an NBA game, and he averaged 50 for the year. So maybe he'd say Wilt, maybe he'd say Jim Brown in football. I'm just kind of going through my mind who we might pick. So we're sitting there for a minute, and he thinks for a while, and he says, Sam Snead. I said, come on, a golfer? Are you kidding me? That can't be true. He said, no. He said, Sam was the best basketball player, the best football player, the best baseball player, still had track records. He's the best fisherman I've ever seen. He's the greatest rifleman. He's a great shooter. He can stand on one leg and put either leg straight up over his head. And he could do that until he was 70. He's double jointed. He said that he could sit and watch Sam Snead hit balls for 2 hours and not move, just watch him hit the golf ball. It was so beautiful to watch. So Sam aimed right, took it inside, and I wrote a book called The Slot Swing because I kind of look at things that have never been written. It's kind of a simple idea. There's only 3 ways you can swing. You can go in and over, or straight up and straight down, or up and drop it to the inside. So I kind of looked at those 3 swing shapes. Now, Snead was a great reverse slot guy. Take it inside and come over the top. He's not really over the top, right? He was so far in, and this way it looked like it was kind of an over the top swing, but he could do anything. He was super long. Another quick story, Harvey Pinnock. I interviewed Pinnock, so I verified this story. He went to play in the North-South Open. The members at Austin Country Club sent him out to play in a tour event. So he went out there, got packed, took a train all the way out there, got to Pinehurst, went out to hit balls, whatever it was the next day. And he's hitting balls and he sees this guy on the end of the range and it catches his eye because Harvey was a great teacher. And he's watching him hit balls and he's going, my God. And he asked the guy, well, who is that down there? He said, oh, don't you know that's Sam Snead? He said, oh, geez. So he walked down and watched him hit balls. Then he went to the first tee, and I guess Snead hit with an old ball, the equipment, hit a 300-yard bullet down the fairway. And Harvey went back and packed up and went home. That's true. So there's Sam, put his left arm, and now he's changed direction there, but Hogan said you could have your arm on the top of that pane of glass. He said the perfect swing would brush against the top of the pane of glass. And then here comes Sam down. So you can see, I mean, the club's shaft's parallel to the impact plane there. Obviously, it's going to be great. One thing is, as he goes through here on that left-hand picture, it's one thing that I've noticed with great players, the way we film, no club, no arms. It's just the body. This is Snead in 1950. This was his best year, he said, so I tried to get that on the videotape I did, and I'm going to show you stop action here. But you know, Snead had that just unbelievable rhythm swing. And one of the things that we noticed with Sam, we'll look at his picture, was this thing. He said they called it the Snead squat. And we just call it ground force reaction right now. But he really sat down big time. The knees splayed apart. So I'm looking to see how much lateral movement is the center of mass for us as a teacher, the belt. You know, is it staying steady or is it moving? How much is it moving to the right? You can also look at the spacing off the left leg. That changes with an iron, you know. The driver swing, the iron swings, or short iron particularly, is different. So you can see the space that he's at, the length of his swing, the power that he generated. And there's the beginning of that sit-down move where the knees go apart. But his left knee traveled a long ways, more like Jack Nicklaus. And then coming in impact, all players have their head behind where they started with a driver. That would be a fundamental. To me, a fundamental is what all great players do, the tour players. That's how I've done my fundamentals. If it's a If they all do one thing, a lot of it's very simple, then those are the things that I've taught in my life. Okay. Well, so this is what Carl and I did. Carl showed me drawing on the TV screen. So I could, again, like I could show you a lot here, but you can see in the pictures the X there, that's the shaft going up and the shaft coming down. So that was the first X that I did. Kind of known for the X factor, but that was the first thing I wrote about. It was how the shaft laid down with the tour players. And that was almost every single tour player. But it's not everyone. It's not Phil Mickelson. It's not Ricky Fowler. Not Raymond Floyd. So there's a few people that don't do that. But it's like 97%, 98%. So it's a pretty high number. But if you've got a great junior that has a little something, you might be careful because those guys are pretty good. All right, let's go to Jack Nicklaus. Hopefully some of you young guys remember Jack Nicklaus. When I start naming, I'm so old, I name people, and the kids I'm teaching, they have no idea what I'm talking about. It's crazy. But that's just the way it is. So you got to be careful. Jack Nicklaus, who was pretty good. 5 PGAs, 6 Masters, 4 US Opens. And then this one's pretty cool. He only won 3 British Opens, but he was runner-up 6 times. And then you see that bottom thing, an 18 years period, the worst he finished was 6th in 17 out of 18. It's just unbelievable. This is a piece of film that Carl Welty did from 1972. He had a great chance to win all 4 majors in 1 year. He won the first 2 and came. Trevino chipped in about 8 times in the over the week, really, in the British Open. So that's Jack. The nice pictures of Nicklaus right there. This one is a little bit slowed down, but he's just hammering a driver here. Jack broke inserts, a lot of them. Inserts was a piece of wood in the center of the club face, and it had screws in it, and that's what we played with. But Jack could still hit it 300 or longer. He was born in Columbus, started taking lessons from Jack Rout. And Jack Rout had been taught by Jack Burke Sr., Jackie Burke's dad. Had been taught by him. He was a good player, and he also had a lot of Alex Morrison influence. Jack Rout liked a lot of the stuff, the rolling off the ankles was a big thing that Jack worked on. I got to spend quite a bit of time with Jack Rout. I was a winter member at Frenchman's Creek, so I played a lot with Gardner Dickinson there, who designed the course, and Jack Rout taught there, and that's where Nicklaus practiced. So I got to watch Jack in the 70s practice there. Jack had the flying right elbow, they said. So it turned out to be not much of a problem. This is Jack hitting an iron. I put this up on Instagram the other day, got a lot of views. Jack's head goes down early in his backswing. It's a little bit the opposite of Bryson DeChambeau. Bryson goes up early and then goes down in the backswing. Jack goes down and then goes up. So you can see that, easy to see. You can see that really high right arm. And there he goes up. The head's centered, but Jack had a lot of knee flex. It's very interesting how Jack could have that knee flex in this way and still rise up, which he did. So it's a very interesting thing. So he hit into a deep flex, stayed behind it. You watch him, how far behind it he stays, hitting an iron. And I'm going to show you Tom Watson a little bit. It's very similar, Tom Watson. So just, again, another Carl Welty piece, hitting right down the line with the driver. We'll take a look here. Jack was considered one of the greatest drivers of all time. Certainly when you put a gun to his head, he could drive it in the fairway. Just, you know, an incredible driver to win all those major championships. And he also finished second in 19 majors. He won 18, finished second 19 times. So here's Jack. He took it on the hands, went a little to the inside. That's something I know Rory McIlroy has talked about, that he's kind of messed with. And it's interesting to see McIlroy win this week. I watched him work with, I did the Masters last year for Sirius XM on the range, and I was watching Pete Cowan work with him. He was working on some different stuff, but McIlroy, you know, pushed the club out a little more like Trevino on his backswing, and always hit a draw or a hook, and he was working on hitting a fade. So he went back this week and did okay, 25 under. So again, you put that yellow line, I put it up right from the hip girdle right up to the right ear to see what the head does. The head, lateral means all directions, right? The way we check head is forwards and back, up and down, right and left. Nobody keeps their head steady. Okay, nope, nobody does that. The most head movement was by one of the greatest ball strikers on the last 20 years on the PGA Tour, was Bubba Watson. 17 and a half inches on Bubba. That's a lot of head movement with the driver. So here's Jack on the top line of the Hogan plane. He obviously got that right elbow really high, little Freddie Couples. Jack always had the face very square at the top. You can see how much he lifted at the top of his backswing by looking at the yellow line. He had a lot of lift. Opposite of Bryson. Okay, here he comes down. And again, it's from, you know, underneath the shoulder, of course, but fairly steep for a driver. And just the ability to hit the dead center of the club face. This is something there, the bottom left picture that's I've looked at. And again, this was Carl and I looked at stuff, but the exit position, or I call it extension position section 7. I look at 3 spots just after impact to see, is the club right between their arms going through? Is it on their right arm or is it on the left arm? It's different for great players. Morikawa's got it on his left arm. Tiger's got it on his right arm. They're both the greatest iron players of the last 50 years. Tiger, no one hit irons better than Tiger. Nobody, until Morikawa's really close. He's right there. Completely different release. Oh yeah, I got my pointer. I forgot about this thing. I could have been pointing. Okay. There it is right there. Okay, the other thing that's kind of cool is Jack's got it right on the parallel to the plane there when he finishes. So it's just a big circle that he makes. As Jack's putting, a lot of people kind of forget how Jack's hunched over the ball. Again, one of maybe the greatest, Tiger and him, the greatest clutch putters of all time. Okay, how am I doing? Where'd Patrick go? He left me. I got to get going. I know I'm behind. This is going to be it's a disaster. I got to get done. I got to get done. I wanted to show you some of the modern players. Trevino. Mentioned I was at Sleepy Hollow. You know, he was there. I traced, you know, followed him every second. I also did CNBC, the senior tour, for a few years, and before he was 50, he did them. So I got to spend a lot of time with him.
But the secret to hitting the ball solid is, if you're not hitting it solid, keep moving the ball back. Don't aim at anything. The big thing about it is when people practice is they get mesmerized with a target. Don't do that. That's when this thing is wide open. It's just hit it. Once you get a pattern and you can hit this ball the same way every time, then we can go to aiming. But you've got to get a pattern. So if you get...
Lee was in La Costa. I mean, he was there with Carl a lot. Carl spent a lot of time with him, and he always had these theories. You know, he always come up with something crazy, like that one. But I like that. You know what? Don't aim at anything. Just hit it out in the range. And that was actually something that Harvey Penick would do when you took a lesson from him. He would have you just hit balls to nowhere. And once he saw the balls going in one place, he said, that's your alignment. Then he'd lay down the club. Pretty cool idea. And that's what Trevino was talking about. Trevino aimed 100 yards to the left and hit it out to the right. It's just unbelievable how far he aimed off the target line. And he copied Hogan, not his swing, his ball flight, a little fade. And when I watched Lee, he was still playing great, but he'd just take that little fade and he would just put it right on the pin on the range. You just can't believe how great it was. Just so much fun to watch. And a lot of players put Trevino in that category near Hogan as being able to control the golf ball. I'll get going here. That's a good picture of Trevino to see how it's dead shut, the club face is at the top. And that's a Morikawa release right there. The hand's way out in front. Very stable club face. Tremendous amount of right side bend. Head dropped a foot. That move of having your head down as you go through is a great way to keep the club on the line a little bit. A lot of the teachers I've worked with in my life have talked about that. You know, but they're great players. I mean, Nicklaus didn't go down any. Zero. He didn't have any drop with his head. Steve Elkington, no drop with the head. Pretty good players. This is a down the line with Trevino. Again, I need to get going because I want to show you a few other players before this is over with. But it's fun. That's 12 pictures, you know, to look at. But you got to know what you're looking at. If you don't do the studies, it's hard to know if it's okay. So this guy, Tom Watson, went to Stanford, grew up Kansas City, 8 majors, Lady Money winner 6 times, small guy. Not that long. It was okay, but not super long. This I just wanted to show you a picture here. This is at the Masters, the 10th hole at Augusta. And I know this is taking a light. You go a little across the line, shut club face, and then he tended to drop it a lot to the inside, which he does right here. You know, this is a massive inside-out swing, which was good for the 10th hole because you could rocket one down the hill there and hit it about 320, which you can see this ball started way out to the right, and the slope on 10 at Augusta goes this way, and you can rocket the ball all the way down the hill. Last year I saw McIlroy pop up his driver to the top of the hill, and he had a long iron. He shanked it, lost ball, and came back. Chunked his next shot short of the green, pitched it on and made a 70-footer for a double. And then, you know, but it was it's just unreal. It's hard to believe McIlroy's such a great player. He played with Xander Schauffele. So Derek, who's supposed to have been here with me, we walked around and watched. So it's pretty amazing to see him. So this will show you a big inside-out swing. So we've got the, it's hard to see where the club is. It's pretty much on his right forearm right there, but you'll see it on the way out where he releases his club out and up. That's a high release, inside out hook swing. So great players can do anything. High, low, hooks, slice, cuts, fades, whatever they need to do. That's a big hook swing. This is Tom hitting about a 7-iron. I'm just going to go forward and show you what it looks like here. See, his head moves a little bit to the right on the takeaway. There's a little immediate shift, even though it's a 7-iron. So you can see that little rock move he had. And then he'll quickly go the other way. Again, pretty common. You can see Good arm, you know, I look at those the arm position at halfway back. Halfway back would be kind of taught for the last 500 years. Everybody's just, you know, probably in Scotland looked at where the club was halfway back. If you're rolling the face or too far in, too far out. And then Watson, it's a long swing with a short iron. You can see how far forward he's already gone. Watson had one of the biggest lateral moves in golf. Big reason, like Greg Norman, he's got no lag almost. The club's going to come back right in front of him. He hit rocket balls. Tom's my age. I played with Watson, and you know, he put the ball way up in the air. Still won 5 British Opens. You'd think you'd have to hit it low and to play great over there. And then when he was 59 years old, he should have won that tournament. I mean, it was a perfect shot he hit on the last hole, and if you remember, it just bounced over the green, and he lost to Stuart Sink in the playoff. Nobody's come close to winning a major at that age. Look how far forward he is, laterally. One of the biggest moves I've seen. And then he kind of goes into the Jack Nicklaus finish. That's kind of the 70s look, right? You know, a little more of that kind of swing. I had to get this guy in, my roommate at college, one of my great friends. Bruce passed away too. He had a brain cancer. I put him in there because he never practiced. And I mean never. I lived with him for 2 years at college, and then we lived together afterwards for a year on pro golf, many tours here in California. Where's Tom Addis? You know, we were down in Southern Cal with Tom. And he didn't practice, and he never practiced on the tour either. So 9 times #1 in total driving. He was always right there. Litsky drove it great every day. And he hit it long. And he was #1 in GIR 3 times. He won 11 straight years on the PGA Tour, just playing in his spare time. He retired pretty early, and then he went sporadically, played on the senior tour. He won 7 times and won the US Senior Open. Had his giant ranch down in south of Dallas. I don't know how many acres it was, hundreds of acres, 3 lakes on it, 12-car garage, made a ton of money, and just the greatest guy in the world. I wanted to show you his swing. It was a reverse slot swing. He took it inside and shut on his backswing. I asked him, you know, he hated to talk. I love talking about golf. I'm like Jamie Mulligan said, a geek. You know, I ask people questions. I ask Devin questions. Anybody, I try to figure out what are they talking, what are you doing? He hated it. He hated to talk about golf. I could get him to talk about it once in a while. I said, Leaky, I gave him the name, by the way, Leaky, in school. But I said, Leaky, you got your wrists like this at the top and you're hitting fades. I said, what's going on? He said, well, where do you want to be at impact? I said, well, yeah, you want to be like that. He said, well, I already got it there. You know, and that's all he said. It was a pretty smart idea, though. And then one year at Doral, he stayed with us for the Honda and sometimes the Doral. But the Hondas, I lived close to where they play the Honda. They're really close together. He shot 75 the first day at Doral. So you're serious trouble, of course, for making the cut. And he always played good there. We had dinner that night, and we're talking. I said, Leaky, what happened today? He said, oh, I didn't hit my irons very good today. I said, really? Did you think about going to hit some balls afterwards today? Maybe hit practice? He said, oh, no. He said, why would I do that? And I said, well, you hit your irons bad, so I thought you'd go practice. He said, no, Jim. He said, why would I do that? I said, I just told you I hit my irons bad. Why would I practice when I'm swinging bad? I'm going to wake up tomorrow, and I'll probably have my old swing back, and I'll be fine. And that's the way he looked at it. And he shot 66 the next day. And that's true. That's a true story. So Litsky, like a lot of drivers, here's one thing I've seen with a lot of great drivers that push with the hips, center of mass away. A lot of great drivers. I think it's really tough to hang left or toward your lead side, let's say. But Leakey never thought about his swing. He couldn't tell you anything. I had him do a bunch of clinics for me at PGA West when he was there, or at Doral, He just hit balls. He didn't, if somebody asked him a question, he couldn't answer it. It's just pathetic. He's behind it. If you looked at him right there, those two pictures in the bottom though, I mean, that would look like Ben Hogan coming down. So this is where it matters, folks. Halfway down to halfway through, and earlier right there, that's in your transition. Not much lag with Leakey. Hit it really high, hit it really long. He's a big guy, 6'2", 200, really long. And you can see here I got my pointer. Tremendous amount of release. I talked to Leakey and he said, I never let my right hand pass my left. And then I show him this picture. All right, what's that? He said, I don't know what that is, but my right hand never passes my left. Annika. Straightest ball striker in my life for hitting a ball that didn't move. Like this. I've done a few clinics with her, but I watched her play a lot. She played with Christy Kerr and Lexi, a little when Lexi was young. 10 majors. 10. Now, she's a clone of Henrik Stenson. They have the exact same swing, if you look at it. And I mean, really, no, there's no two swings that are more close than Stenson and Annika. And what do they have in common? Swedish golf team. What does the Swedish golf team have in common? Jimmy Ballard. Jimmy Ballard taught the Swedish golf team. So they've got an absolute dead Jimmy Ballard golf swing. I could go all through the things that Ballard talked about. So I think it's good. That's why I think knowing some history is good for you, because there's different stuff you can look at. One thing is the club goes away there. You can see it going right up the shaft plane. So Jimmy wanted that club to point at the target line all the way, here and those two parts of the swing. And he wanted you to get behind it. That's a big, big thing. So Annika, again, she's got her arm up there pretty good, a little on the high side, which Ballard talked a lot about that, getting the club in that position, like Stenson. She's got the club halfway down, delivery position, right here. So the way we film, that's almost dead straight shot, right here. And she's had that Annika finish where her chest goes all the way around. Complete. You'll see it good right here. So you can see that nice rock to the right. She had a pretty long swing, or just past parallel. Not quite Bubba Watson length, but long. Jimmy wanted you to kind of stiff arm it up here on the way back. He just hated this. Annika was, pretty famous for looking off the ball. I think that's when, commentators, you got to be careful of commentators that could say anything. But they finally figured out, yeah, she's looking down the target line, looking down the target really fast. So there's been some great players that do that, of course, lots of great players. Ernie Els did a lot, David Duval, big time, Jim Furyk. A lot of great players look off the shots. So that would be, as Carl would say, a right-eye dominant player. Right, Doug? Okay, Tiger. You remember Tiger? The young guys out there? I talk to the kids, they don't remember Tiger. It's almost like you got to move on. We got to get to Justin Thomas. 15 majors. He won the 4 majors in a row in 2000 and 2001. He had all 4 on his desk. And 2002, he still had a great year. And then most amazing thing to me that I've ever seen in my teaching is he changed teachers, changed his swing. And it worked. It took a little while, not that long. And then he made another big change, of course, to a really different swing. Tiger was a real full release player as a kid. He maybe Rudy Duran's here, I don't know, but Rudy Duran started him. Is he? Probably not. John Anselmo was his teacher, great teacher. It's a great book, the Anselmo book. I love that book. It talks about the imagery. He had a lot of image stuff. And then that was till he was 17. So he started winning the U.S. Juniors with Anselmo, and then went to Butch, and then to Hank, and then to Sean, and then Como worked with him some too. And now he's been pretty much on his own. He's got a lot of information. 683 weeks at number 1. This is my favorite Tiger piece. We shot this at Doral. We snuck it in there during the tournament. This is a driver and a 6-iron to the first hole at par 5. That's a pretty powerful move. And there's a high right side finish like Annika. That's pretty easy on your back right there. Oh, we know Tiger did some other stuff though in his life. There's a few things going on. He was jumping out of planes, working out with the SEALs. So, you know, who's the greatest player in the history of all time? Is it Hogan? Is it Jack Nicklaus? Is it Tiger? It's a pretty small list. It was sure fun watching him play. We filmed him every year at Doral. By filming him, I mean we filmed every shot he hit in the practice round for 17 years. Every shot. Sometimes we had 15 guys going around with him at one time. We finally got banned. The tour sent me a letter from a lawyer that we couldn't film anymore. And I said, you know, it says right on the ticket you can film on, everybody films now, of course, with the camera, the iPhones. But yeah, we got in trouble. But Tiger played one ball in the practice round. Played one ball out. Just like who else? Jack Nicklaus. He hit the same clubs when he practiced, and he copied Jack a lot. All right, looking down the target line, this is at La Costa. So you know, these are the lines, some of the lines that I use when I study swings. So you can see in that bottom right picture, that's where you can really see the club in that zone. And this is a pretty cool one because there the club goes up on that green line, and then we'll watch where it comes on the downswing. And this is right in the middle of his greatest golf. So Tiger kind of had the perfect swing. So that's the one you want. So there's his impact plane. You can see the club coming down. He just hit a rope rifle shot right here. Okay. I've got this set of clubs that I bought. And it's gone up in value, but I just wanted to just quickly go through 1999. He won the Buick, he won the Memorial, he won the Western Open, won the PGA, won the NEC, won the National Car Rental, won the Tour Championship, won a World Golf Championship, and won Deutsche Bank. That's 1999. 2000, wins the Mercedes, the AT&T, Bay Hill, the Memorial, the US Open, the British Open, the PGA, World Golf Championship, and the Bell Canadian. The next year he wins the Masters, so he's got all 4. But look at those years. And then he changed his swing. It's like, wow, it's pretty crazy. I had to put this guy in. Calvin came and taught at my school for a little while because 10 years in a row, #1 in driving. How can you, it's unreal. And he was 3 times #1 in GIR. Oops. Oh, it's all right. We'll go past. But I wanted to put Calvin up. I kind of wanted to show you that swing one time. Whoops, I guess I can't do it. All right, can't do it. So Calvin took the club. Okay, good. Thanks. Thank you. Somebody, there's a ghost over there. Calvin really took the club up. He was he loved Jimmy Ballard too. He was another Ballard guy. He had his left arm hurt. It broke when he was a young boy, and it was just glued in position, so he couldn't do anything. So he just took it like this to swing. That's a big thing that Ballard liked in his swing. He put the thing around your arm and stuff. But there's again a lot of ways to teach. I know I got to get going. When I wrote the X Factor, I used Mike McTagg from San Francisco. Then we had the sports motion trainer. This is pre the biomechanics or anything. And then I wanted to show you the biomechanics I had from 1994. This is Christy Kerr. She got to #1 in the world in 2010. This was a big deal here. I always told her she was going to win a US Open. She was the #1 ranked junior and the #1 ranked amateur at the same time. And another thing that she did is she won the Florida High School boys. I played with her a lot. We play in the evenings, and she'd play with the other assistants at Doral. And she was my partner usually, and she worked for me in the office too. But she had 9 Solheim Cups. Okay, those were her numbers. I think you can see here the year. That was the name of the company. And then later, Dr. Rob Neal came to work for me from Australia. He was at the Australian Institute of Sport, and he came to work for me in 2003. And he worked for me for 11 years. So we had his biomechanics in the office. We used it. We did thousands of amateurs and quite a few tour players. And a lot of you know that name, Dr. Rob Neal. That's a good guy. Swing studies. So we do these swing studies every year. I brought a couple. Maybe I'll show you if you want to tonight, or if you come around or something. Every year we did 30 of them. So that would be one thing. Like, how many guys lift their left heel on the PGA Tour? Because you hear different people say things like you should lift your left heel. Yeah, well, a lot of people do lift their left heel, but we count lifting the left heel if it comes that much off the ground. Like Xander Schauffele, his heel comes slightly off. So to me, yeah, is your head moving? Yes or no? Is the heel coming off the ground? Yes or no? It's coming off the ground. So we count that. But 60% aren't. And then we've got, how many guys did the head go up on the backswing? So I wanted to get to, now I can get to some guys here. So we got John Rahm. Of course, he's just a phenomenal player. He's got that bowed left wrist, the real short backswing. He's a big guy. There's a lot to look at with John. He stays pretty centered. This is already his transition forward right here. It's not a great video, but I did want to show you right here the grip. So you're seeing some guys with like really weak grips, and he's got a really weak grip, left-hand grip. Okay, now we get to Daniel Berger. Now you got to think about this. If you have a kid at your facility and he's got this backswing and that swing you just saw, are you going to let that go? So he's got one of the craziest swings. His dad was a top 10 player in tennis in the world. He is a super athlete. He's got this club way laid off, and then, can you play the swing one more time, please? He's got the Blitzky move. He's got a dead shut club face at the top, and he's got a little bit over when he starts down. Can you see that little over move? So he's got a little Blitzky in there. So I just wanted to mention, one of my teachers, Bobby Cole, did work with him as a kid for 2 years, and he didn't change it. Bobby Cole, you don't know Bobby Cole, but he played 22 years on the PGA Tour from South Africa. So I'm pretty proud of him not teaching that swing out of him. Berger's a really interesting swing. It'd be tough, really tough not to change it. All right, we're going to have to watch Dustin one more time on going back, because Dustin just rips that face in his hands when he starts the backswing. Kind of a weird finish. You're going to see Dustin, like a lot of guys, goes to the outside of his trail foot on the backswing. We used to think that's not right. Shouldn't do that. So watch him turn the hands. He played a lot with my son, John, tons. They're good friends. Play it one more time so they can look at that right foot, please. So Dustin's been, number one or near number one for a lot of years. You can watch his right foot here, and you'll see it. So that's eversion and inversion on that right foot. Definitely not everybody does it, but I taught a guy, an amateur, the best amateur I ever taught in my life. He made a Walker Cup team. He lived in New York City. George Zeringer. He always did that. But I knew a lot of people did. Bobby Jones did that. I knew a lot of people did. Sergio Garcia. So I didn't take that away, thank God. DJ keeps the front foot on the ground. Goes down a ton. A ton. So those are the kind of things we measure, how much. Then we got Morikawa, super weak left hand. Fun swing to look at. Really stable lower body. I mean, I got criticized for the X factor for saying that the minimum hip tune should be 40 degrees. But if you watch that swing, it doesn't look like he turns 30. We'd have to measure it, but yeah, let's take a look again. I'm still okay. I got a few minutes left. The guy Wilco has about the same amount of turn, the guy that's going 140 miles an hour right now from South Africa. So there's lots of ways to do it. In the X Factor, I said between 40 and 65. What I found, people talk about a lot of hip turning. When you get tilted, you're facing the ball, you're against the golf ball, and you turn away in your backswing, it's almost impossible to go more than 70 degrees with your hips. I don't think you can go much more than that. And for sure, your shoulders far outturn your hips on the backswing. Okay, here's Morikawa. Look at that impact position, kind of like, very similar to Trevino. Huge head drop, and the hands are way forward. Fun to watch. It's just hard to believe how accurate he is with his irons. All of the guys are great, but he's kind of separated himself a little bit with his iron game. This is Sergio. You can see him, he's always got on the outside of his right foot. Now, there's a lot of tour players, if you ask them who's been the best ball striker for the last 20 years on the PGA Tour, Sergio. That's a guy I walked around a lot of times with at Doral. I spent some time with him and his dad. His dad's his only teacher. There's a lot of, it's incredible how many dads are the teacher or spend a huge amount of time with their kids. Xander Schauffele, of course, but there's a lot of them. And then there might be a teacher that helps them later on, but the dad did the heavy lifting. Okay. This is Paul Casey. He's another big lateral guy, and just an amazing ball striker. He does lift his heel. And then we look at how many guys lift their heel at impact. It's a huge number. So we used to think that's wrong. Now, I got a lot of grief for Lexi Thompson when they finally realized that she came up on her toes at impact. This going back a long time. When she was 14, she led an LPGA Tour event. When she was 14, she was the #1 ranked junior and the #1 ranked amateur in the United States. when she was 16, she won an LPGA Tour event, which I thought would last forever. She broke a 54-year record, 54 years. The next year, Lydia Ko won at 15. So it didn't even last a year. But Lexi is a phenomenal driver. She hits it super long and straight, and she just leverages up off the ground the vertical forces in this swing. You know, we've seen so many players do it. I mean, I knew it was fine. Her dad came to me after they commented that a few people said there was the wrong thing to do, and I said, no, don't, we're not changing that. So this is Casey. I'm not going to spend too much time, but we'll go to the next one. So this is our guy, Cantley. I just wanted to show you one thing with Jamie's guy. I taught him since he was a boy. And I wanted to mention one thing about Jamie. When I was at PGA West, Jamie used to drive over a lot to see one of my teachers. And he was working on his own game, but he was also working on his presenting skills, because Denny Gray was the best presenter of ideas that I've ever had teach for me. This guy was just a magnificent speaker. And I thought it was just so great to see, Jamie wasn't that famous as he is now, but to have him come over, the effort to come over and work on his game. And I see quite a bit of Denny in the way he speaks, and in the ease that he speaks. Maybe he was always that way, but that's how Denny was, same thing. Well, Patrick Cantley's got something that a lot of great players have, and Jamie didn't change. You know what it is? One very unusual thing. Anybody?
Bent left arm.
Bent left arm, that's right. He's got a big bent left arm coming into impact. So lots of great players do that. I'll show you a few here. I didn't show it that great, but you can see it a little bit right there. That wasn't our best picture, but I've got some other ones to show you. Here's Schauffele. He, of course, goes, you can see he's going to go up a little bit on his heel right there. And then when he comes through, he goes up, like a lot of guys, up on his heel. And he hits it great, and it's fun, so much fun to watch him play. Not a big guy, hits it a long ways. He's got about 119 with the driver, which gets you in pretty good up there. He's got a nice, kind of like a classic, everything looks great. You can see how much he drops, how far behind he is with the driver. Beautiful to watch. Justin Thomas, we got the circle on the left foot again, because Justin goes airborne. He is completely off the ground when he's hitting it a lot of times. And his dad, Mike Thomas, didn't take that away from him. Lots of kids do that, but you could take it away or leave it, Is it something that I think a lot of people would, in the old days, would take it away, but now we know a lot more. And Justin Thomas is going 125, 126, and he's 5'10", he's a small guy. The other guy that's smaller than you think is McElroy. I'm down to about 5'11" now. I can keep going down an inch. And I sort of tower over him, he says he's 5'10", there's no way. No, impossible, no chance. And he's another 125 guy. So there's a lot of small guys are hitting it, we say it's all big guys on the PGA Tour, but it really isn't. It really isn't. Again, you just hear things, and then that becomes a truth. It becomes part of that confirmation bias. Justin Thomas like a perfect backswing. And then he's got this. Okay, now we got the big guy. And he goes up, sometimes he goes up a little bit more than that, and then he's a little lower at the top, And he's done a big swing change because he came to see me when he was an amateur over at Doral, not to teach, but to just talk about the golf machine and some ideas. He loves all that stuff. It's so much fun talking to him. But now he's lifting his left heel, he's moving behind, he swings a lot longer, and he's got a lot of lag in his swing, which before he kind of had a centered swing. When I'd see him, I've got a school at Mayacoba in Mexico, and I'd go down there for the tournament every year. And a few times we'd spend time there. He'd say, I want you to just watch me and see if I keep my head absolutely steady. So he wanted zero head movement, the feeling of that. And not now. He's trying to, I mean, what he did at the Ryder Cup was driving the first hole and some of the things, it's just crazy. Those, you know, the games just changed so much. They're driving greens and drivers short irons to par fives. I don't know. I guess I heard Gary players say as soon as they drive the first hole at Augusta, that'll be it, you know. At the Augusta, maybe they'll change the ball. And Finau's, you know, short swing again, but he's a huge guy. And some, you know, it's a few different things there in the way he sets up with his hands way forward. There's some, you know, it's different. But Boyd Summerhays, I mean, I think that guy, I really think he's a great teacher. I really like what he talks about. And he was a great, well, not a great player, but a really top player himself. So this is a very more centered swing. When Tony wants to, he can go, I think, 205, 210 ball speed if he wanted to. He's going 190 right now with a 3/4 backswing and no weight shift. Koepka's got a lot of move to the right, a lot of lateral, and just, you know, just such a magnificent player. Now, this is an interesting case. So you got a kid that comes to you, and he's already shot 61 when he's 11, and he's got a weird grip, his fingers off the club, he's got a bent left arm at the top, he rocks funny, and he's got a huge chicken wing going through, and you don't change it, and he wins, and he's great. So Cameron McCormick didn't change it. Amazing. But I don't think you're going to teach it to a lot of people. But you could pick out so much wrong with Spieth. Just really some strange stuff. Look how far to the right he's going. That's a modern swing right now. He's made some different changes. He's got a very weak grip. Great iron player. I guess we didn't have an impact of him, you know. Well, this is a good one to look at. Now, Lee West has been #1 in the world. He's been played on like 20 consecutive Ryder Cups. And he's got the arm. That's a little Cantley deal right there. He tried to change that at one time, and he went to about 600 in the world and went back to his old swing. But, you know, it looks weird. He's got one of those swings like Tyrrell Hatton, where they kind of go through with their arms bunched up. Looks bad. And they both hit it great. So it's you kind of get the gist of this whole talk I'm doing today. Another thing we're starting to see is the footwork. So Scotty Scheffler's got the club completely toe down at the top, and then both feet rocket away from the target line. They both pull back, going through. So Greg Norman did that with his right foot. His right foot went right behind him, and that's when he was young, and just hammering the ball. Scotty Scheffler can really play, man. It's fun, but it is amazing to see both feet pulling away. But then we got this other guy that does the same thing with his feet, not with his swing. So once again, you know, be hard not to change that when he was a kid. But he's a great, you know, great athlete. He's a little bigger than you think. That went out over my safety zone right there. The guys at Oklahoma State loved him. My son went to Oklahoma State. From Oklahoma State there, did I see her? Yeah. So it's a little bit different. But what a player. Man. So there's the top of the backswing. Just got to look at that for a while. Great. Questions? Oh, is that okay? Okay. All right. That was my thing from Aristotle. That's me. The more you know, the more you don't know. Okay, I guess, did you want to?
Do you want to open it up for me?
Oh, yeah, if there's some questions, we'll go a little over time. I guess there's a few questions. Yes?
Hey, Jim, so with everything that you showed here today, that definitely everything is different, and you said that your fundamentals are the things that they all do the same. What are those few minimal things?
There are a few. There's more than a few. Well, I should say you need to buy the book, but where your left arm starts at address and where it is at impact, 100% of the guys have the left arm more forward. The left wrist is flat or bowed at impact, so you know that. The downswing is inside the backswing. They hit the center of the club face all the time. Center contact. Sorry, I can't see out there too good. But there's a bunch of them. The head moves. I mean, there's things that are anti-fundamentals. You could teach people not to move their head. That would be not a good thing to do. But sometimes I teach people to keep their head steady. I do that all the time. And people have poor head movement. That's not good. But a little bit of freedom there is good. And you know, a lot of great players go down quite a bit. There's a lot of side bend. Another one is where the left shoulder is. If you take a point here at the top of your backswing, when you go through, 100% of the guys are underneath, the right shoulder's underneath. Kind of put me on the spot doing all the fundamentals. Anything else? Yes.
It's just a quick opinion on your point. If you've got two players that come here to try to improve and get better, and they've got a Matthew Wolf or Jim Furyk, or
Yeah.
you know, when do you make the determination of some of those nuances, whether to change it or to not change it?
That's a great question. When do you change somebody that's got an odd style? Well, you know, I played a lot. I've played with a lot of good players, and they've done a lot of different things. So it's the quality of the strike, how they hit the ball, how they control the golf ball. Can they move it both ways? Can they go up and down? If the ball striking is great, and then the other thing would be, you know, to answer the other question, is from halfway down to halfway through. I mean, you can use TrackMan now, but you know, you got to be good. You got to be from halfway down to halfway through, very close to neutral. So your swing direction's got to be really good. So that's something that I look on TrackMan all the time. But we use video. I mean, I don't really need, to be honest, TrackMan for that, but it is fun to put the numbers out for people. I would say that in modern instruction, for sure, people love to see the data themselves. They really like to see what's happening and compare, and I think that's really good. I think that's a very good thing. But I also feel like people respond best to visual teaching. So when I show them things, either demonstrate myself or show them on video great players, and I don't show them great players, I just pick anybody actually on the tour. And I try not to get one model, but I try to show them, you know, how the footwork, how the body's moving, how the arms are working. and then show them their swing and give them the idea of what they need to do better. So that was the side-by-side comparison. I saw another hand there somewhere. Yes?
Where do you fall on grip pressure?
Excuse me?
Where do you fall on grip pressure?
Oh, grip pressure. Well, I fall on the light side. I go in and with a lot of players and move the club to see how tight they're holding the club. Now, grip pressure changes throughout the swing, for sure. You know, as you go through a swing, you're going to firm up. But I think most people that I teach grip, by far, doing hundreds and hundreds of golf schools, they grip way too tight. The average player grips the club way too tight, too much arm pressure. Now, if you grip the club firm and you're very relaxed with your wrist joints, I think that's okay. But I don't like, I've used a 1 to 10 scale for a long time, and I've tried to keep good players at 5 or under in that range, but sometimes drop them even a little bit lower. You guys had Freddie Couples here, and I did watch that one presentation, and he said you could almost take the club out of his hands. And Freddie's from Seattle and went to the University of Houston like I did. I felt Freddie's club. You know, it's so light you can't believe it. But that may be guys that grab it. You know, I know there's some studies right now that say you can hit it further with a tight hand pressure. You know, I'm a big skeptic. I gotta prove that to me. Just because somebody says something, my immediate reaction is I don't believe it. That's my number one thing. Anything else? I got a little, okay, one more thing.
What's your thoughts on transition? Where do you feel it starts?
Yeah, where does transition start? So you see on YouTube and Instagram and things that people say you start your transition as soon as the club gets halfway back. I don't think it can be. I mean, you can start like Watson with a short iron. When you're in here, you're going to start that lean or the little move forward. But a lot of guys go back, as you could see on those videos, they get back there a little bit forward before they start down. But it's there's a two-way move. The club's going back while something's going forward. There's not a real stop at the top and everything down together, but it's a lot closer than people think. With all the biomechanics that we did use at Doral for a lot of years, and I've got gears. I had gears in Texas, my school in Texas. I had gears at Doral, and I have gears at the Biltmore. You can see that the change of direction and the start of the upper body is really close. It's not like a gigantic, huge gap, although some people, you know, I call it that separation. When I did the X Factor, I talked about how this lower body that's dot on your belt moves forward while this is going up. And some people do it a lot. Relatively a lot, let me put it that way. Like Angel Cabrera, who's in jail now, had the biggest, you know, he had a gigantic separation, and there was another guy that just hammered it and didn't really practice that much, but he was a great ball striker. He won the Masters and the US Open. So I'll get out of here. I just wanted to go through a few things at the end. Monitor your own BS meter. The talent code is 10,000 hours. Really? Impact position is nearly the same. No. You should lift your left heel in the backswing or not lift it. You should not hit 1,000 balls a day. Never allow inward extension. We didn't mention McElroy, Nicklaus, VJ, and a bunch of others. If you did 10,000 hours of perfect practice, you could be on the PGA Tour. You could be Colin Morikawa or DJ or Bryson. You should be a rounded athlete. Play different things. But then you think of Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Michelangelo, Einstein, Warren Buffett, Bryson DeChambeau, Tiger Woods, Ben Hogan, Bill Gates, Bill Belichick. Not rounded, relentless, one-dimensional. There are excellent methods on the full swing and the short game. Which one's better? I've seen on the PGA Tour 2 guys with different teachers working on the opposite things finish 1-2 in a tour event. An interesting phenomenon for me in my life, going to see some method teachers, is the 100% believability in what they're teaching. But I learned a lot from them. They're very, very interesting people to see. I've seen the great players in my life. The great players are supremely gifted athletes. They're highly motivated. They work hard. They have unbelievable hand-eye coordination. As a coach or a teacher, I hope one of those kids grows up at your facility. I had a few. Christy Kerr, Eric Compton, Lexi Thompson were on my doorstep. So my advice would be, don't overteach. Don't ruin them. And you'll be known as a top teacher. Let them take you on a ride. There's a lot of ways to get it done. Thanks so much for having me here today. It was a pleasure to come. Thank you.